Chapter 2 of Administrative and Office Management will tackle about the evolution of the management thought and the evolution of the management theories. Now, knowing the story behind the evolution of management thought and the evolution of theories is essential if you are familiar with them, including the development that brought about the current practices in business. And then you will have a better understanding of management principles that can help you to manage people more effectively. Now, what is the evolution of management? The point is that a lot has changed about management. Emphasis is given on the structure, and the authority is no longer as strong as it used to be in the past. Now, the focus is on employees. However, there are theories on the factors that motivate employees. But the understanding that knowing how these theories came about can give you the needed knowledge to manage your employees appropriately. And we try to understand the evolution of management thought and management theories as we go along discussing this chapter. Now, how did the evolution of management came about? Now, the evolution of management thought is a process, and it's a process that started in the early days of man. And it began since the period man saw the need to live in groups. And mighty men were able to organize the masses, share them into various groups. Then the sharing was done in accordance with the masses' strength, mental capacities, and intelligence. So you could just imagine during the early years there's already disparity and the classification of what kind of men are appropriately grouped together accordingly. Now the point is that that management has been practiced in one way or the other since the civilization began. If you want a good example where advanced management principles were applied, we consider the organization of the olden days, the Roman Catholic Church. See how strong, and until now, the Roman Catholic Church are standing. Now, the organization of the olden days, which classifies the Roman Catholic Church as an example even, the military forces is also one good example of any country for that matter. And then, the ancient Greece, as we see the early civilization during those times. These are all excellent examples of how the evolution, organized masses, are being discussed as an example. But the Industrial Revolution brought the drastic change in these mass groupings. And suddenly, the need to develop a more holistic and a more formal management theory became a necessity eventually. One very good example again for a good reading actually is references coming from Frederick Taylor, which introduced us the scientific management theory that explains that the evolution of management thought, that there are stages of the evolution of the management thought even. So under the Frederick Taylor and the scientific management. Now, this topic actually is broad, and it also requires careful explanation and the thought process, and one cannot understand what it entails or appreciates how it happened without looking at the various areas where the said evolution occurred. Now, for better understanding, the evolution management thought will be shared into 4 different stages, and these include the pre-scientific management period, the classical theory, the neoclassical theory or behavioral approach, bureaucratic model or Max Weber's, and the pre-scientific management period. Now, in the industrial revolution that took place in the 18th century, had a significant impact on management as a whole. It changed how businesses, as well as individuals, raised capitals, organized labors, organized labors of productions, such as the land, such as the labor, and such as the capital. Theirs was to make an effort to combine these factors in achieving a targeted goal successfully. However, the new dimension that management took following the Industrial Revolution cannot be discussed without mentioning notable personalities. Personalities who contributed their thoughts, their theories, and their quarter. And they were able to introduce useful ideas and approaches to give management a precise and universally acceptable direction. Here are some of these personalities. Professor Charles Babbage from the United Kingdom. And Professor Babbage, a renowned professor in mathematics at Cambridge University, discovered that manufacturers were relying on guesswork and suggestions and urged them to utilize mathematics and science to be more accurate and productive. So that is Professor Charles Babbage. Robert Owens, also from the United Kingdom. Robert Owens was regarded as the father of personnel management because his approach and the focus on employee welfare. He introduced cooperation and trade unions, and Robert Owens believed that employee welfare could determine their performance to a large extent. He even encouraged the training of workers, the education for their children, canteens in the workplace, and the shorter working hours, among others. In the classical theory, Professor Babbage, Robert Owens, and other names earlier mentioned can be regarded as the pioneers of management. But their contribution to the evolution of management is little. The beginning of what is known the science of management started in the last decade of the 19th century. And names comes up like Emerson, F.W. Taylor, H.L. Grant, and others, and paved the way for the establishment of what is called the scientific management. Now, during the classical period, management thought was focused on job content, standardization, the division of labor, and the scientific approach towards the organization. It also was closely related to the Industrial Revolution as well as the rise of large-scale enterprises. Now, the neoclassical theory, however, in this period of evolution of management thought, it is an improvement of the classical theory. In other words, it modified and improved upon the classical theory. For instance, classical theory focused more on the area of job content, including the management of physical resources, while the neoclassical theory gave more profound emphasis on employee relationships in the work environment. Now, the bureaucratic model comes along. A German sociologist called Max Weber proposed this model, and it includes a system of rules. Division of labor hinges on functional specialization, legal authority, and power. Now, the hierarchy of authority and placement of employees is based on their technical competence. So that is how bureaucratic model is being handled by German sociologist called Max Weber. Now, the evolution of the management theories comes along. Now, organizations have been shaped and through the writings of several writers. Their write-up consisted of governance of kingdoms and management of humans. Okay, so give emphasis on that. Governance of kingdoms and management of humans. And these formed the literature that helped in the development of management theories. And these management models were also offered by the military, by the political and religious organizations. Okay? You can also, as a reference, you can read Frederick Taylor's 4 Principles of Scientific Management. For instance, the Sun Tzu's book, The Art of War, was written in the 16th century BC. And Sun Tzu was also a Chinese army general. However, the writings in Sun's book were also used for managerial purposes. Okay? Now, the book highlights that it's possible to achieve success by using the strength of the organization to exploit the weaknesses of rivals. Another great book was Chanakya's Arthashastra. It was written in the 3rd century BC and focused on the governance of the kingdom concerning the formulation of policies of governance and management of people. Okay? Now, to conclude, the evolution of management started from the civilization, so that we have now is refined and improved management thoughts and theories. But knowing this evolution came about is vital. It will help to improve one's knowledge of the process and effectively utilize management principles for the betterment of the organization. Okay. Okay, so I have already discussed the evolution theories of how management came about. Okay, see you again in my next chapter. Thank you.